Alright everyone, welcome to my reviews of the Planet of the Apes franchise. We have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes coming out in a couple days at the time you'll see this. So I'm gonna go ahead and review these. The original Planet of the Apes is released in 1968. It is directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, based on the novel of the same name by Pierre Boulez, written by Michael Wilson and Rod Serling. It stars Charlton Heston, Roddy McDowell, Kim Hunter, Maurice Evans, James Whitmore, James Daly, and Linda Harrison. The plot of this masterclass sci-fi film is that we are following a group of astronauts who get marooned on a futuristic planet where the apes rule and the humans are slaves. And so what happens is, in this situation, the crew class lands and it appears desolated at first, but the surviving crew members stumble upon a society in which apes have evolved into creatures with human-like intelligence and speech. The apes have assumed the role of the dominant species, and humans are mute creatures wearing animal skin. That's the premise of this brilliance of a sci-fi movie, and one of the best sci-fi movies of its time and of ever. The original Planet of the Apes. Let's talk about it. So it is well regarded that this movie was considered a classic for its time. It was praised for the makeup and for the story, and it got Oscar nominations for Best Original Score and Costume Design at the 41st Academy Awards. Has been selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, and launched a massive franchise with 4 sequels, a TV series, animated series, comic books, and Roddy McDowell has had a long-running relationship with the franchise. And we've had a 2001 remake and a new series of films with Andy Serkis, and you have a new trilogy that is coming with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So 10 movies overall by the time Kingdom comes out, but this original film is simply a classic for its time. This is a immense film that it still holds the test of time, and it just knows that it is a simply masterclass of a film. We have been spoiled by the greatness of the Andy Serkis Caesar films and what we're gonna get of Kingdom of the Apes that we forget how classic that original film was. So in my review, I wanted to talk about why I feel this movie is still classic and why this movie still is a masterpiece of cinema. Starting off with the pros, I want to talk about the number one thing I think needs to be discussed. I very much enjoy the fact that this is just a pretty entertaining little adventure. It's a B-movie sci-fi film that it knows what it is, and for the 60s, you did a lot what you could go off of. This movie has been parodied in a couple of other things as such, and a lot of other things. It's been parodied to death, especially on The Simpsons with the chimpanzee to chimpanzee musical number, which that is one of the first things I do think of now when it comes to Planet of the Apes. But this original film is just iconic at the time, for being a simple B movie that started this whole franchise, and it still is groundbreaking, it's masterful. And it touches on some very interesting themes when it comes to this. You have, of course, developing characters. Mysterious, of course, with our lead character. The twist ending, which we'll get to. And it does tackle on some pretty interesting, well done subjects, which in the wrong hands would have been a little heavy handed. But I think the way this movie tackles prejudice and religion versus science and corruption in the parallel belt resembling the modern societal conditions, which is still relevant today. And also the fact that it is talking about other great things when it comes to this movie, like how can scientific truth be heresy, and also touching upon the prevalence of animal cruelty and the civil rights movement of the 1960s. It's pretty interesting to watch that stuff, and I think that was the stuff I really enjoyed when it comes to it. There's also a courtroom scene with some people. It does kind of be frustrating, of course, but I think the way it's handled is very well done, which is paralleling today's politics. And there's a nice little gag here which I thought is funny. So I think from a writing standpoint, this movie has a lot to offer in terms of script, and I credit that to the screenwriters. Franklin Schaffner directs this movie with compassion. Years later, this would be the same director who would go on to win an Academy Award for Patton, which is a great movie on itself, and it's a really well done film. He directs this movie with competency, and he makes it look like a competent feature film. It is absolutely creative in terms of the filmmaking and such, but I think it really comes down to how you're able to handle the subject. So, because it is a silly B movie with this first film, but this was the 60s, so you couldn't do a lot of what we have now. Cinematography by Leon Shamron and the editing by Hugh S. Fowler is pretty good. An hour and 52 minutes, don't feel like it. There's Eastman color process here. You also have a great score by Jerry Goldsmith, one of the best legendary composers. May he rest in peace. And for a $5.8 million budget, it looks real. So you definitely see a lot of the real locations and such. This was before motion capture, so they shot this around Lake Powell, Glen Canyon, National Recreation Area, Utah, California. So it is well shot here, and it is well done in terms of makeup. The makeup in this movie looks really good. There is one exception to the makeup, which I'll explain in the mixed category because it's not really a negative, but it's all for the better of it. And John Chambers' makeup is incredible. I do love the way he does makeup here. And it's well handled in terms of that. Acting, of course, is good here. You have the late Charlton Heston, who was a Hollywood icon at the time, as George Taylor. Very mysterious character, but I think he does a really good job in the role as George Taylor. You also have Linda Harrison as Nova, which she doesn't say a whole lot, but it's your facial expressions that makes it worth it. You also have James Daly as Dr. Honorius. He's great. James Whitmore is fantastic as the president of the assembly. You have Kim Hunter and Maurice Evans as Dr. Zero and Dr. Zaius, which we know The Simpsons parodied that. Dr. Zaius. But they all do a really good job. You also have other actors here like Robert Gunnar and Lou Wagner and such. Roddy McDowell, I want to talk about him as Dr. Cornelius. He is great in this role. I think he really has a lot of great moments in this. The guy was a great actor. I do remember seeing him as a kid in The Bug's Life, even though it was voiceover. And he's done things like Overboard and The Poseidon Adventure and Fright Night and Fright Night Part 2, which I've actually heard is pretty underrated. So, this guy was a legendary actor, and he does great in here for all the makeup that he has to be under. So that is actually, I think, really well done. He was also in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which I have yet to watch. I still need to watch that movie. But you have a solid cast here combined with a good screenplay and competent direction. So all of that is really well done. And how can we not talk about Planet of the Apes and not mention that was an iconic plot twist that still is incredible. Just when I first saw this, because I saw the Mark Wahlberg one a few years ago when I was just a small baby, and I didn't think much of him. It wasn't until my middle school years what I really wanted to see what Planet of the Apes was about. About all I had access to was the Tim Burton one and a little bit of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. But just going back to this one, the plot twist is still crazy. And I have to give credit to where credit is due. Without this original classic, you would not have this iconic film franchise that has wildly found its footing through the positives and the negatives and everything in between. It's been a whirlwind of a franchise, but it's for the better, making it one of the more successful franchises. But again, that plot twist is something that wow, that is a crazy fucking plot twist to see. It's so crazy, and it's just crazy. And some iconic lines in this too, but it's that plot twist that really makes this worth everything you're seeing. And you know the infamous line that they play in the ending. Do I have to say it? We're gonna play the clip.
You maniac! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
I will say, for the mixed aspects, it's not really a knock on the movie. This is just a thing with the film. I will say the makeup effects have not held up as much in a few areas. So some of the makeup is a little bit dated in places, and that is one issue I will say, and I do think it does kind of detract from the film, but it's not enough to really destroy this film. I think they do a good job at handling the makeup effects pretty well for the time, the movie, in the era that this came out in. So I'll give a lot of credit to that. That's actually one of the things I think is done very well in this. And there's maybe a few moments of humor that does not hold up, but again, it was the 60s, so I can let it go. I'm still going through a lot of classic movie watching in my life, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing in terms of that. But overall thoughts, I think the original Planet of the Apes is simply a classic in every sense of this. I love the story, I love the performances, I like the crazy idea that we have here. I really enjoy the scenery and the performances and the acting. Everyone does a really good job here. I think this is a pretty entertaining little movie that without this original classic we would not have gotten the franchise that we have. And so you do have to give this movie respect, because without it we wouldn't have something like this. So I definitely give a lot of credit to what you got. But so overall, if you are one of those people who has yet to see Planet of the Apes 1968, I highly suggest you do it. This is worth it. Well, that's gonna do it for the video that you just watched. If you want to see more, my channel icon is up here. If you want to see more content from me, all my social medias are right here in this end card. I will also leave a playlist and a video here for you to see what the channel is about. As always, acknowledge me, stay Epictastic, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.